Let's go. Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the podcast. Today, we will be discussing observations from today's OTA practice. But first of all, Khari, been a minute. How we feeling, brother?
I'm doing great, man. I'm not going to lie. There's a part of me that enjoys not being a part of the grind every single day. But it's like, I'm always like checking what you're doing and seeing the practice reports anyway. And so it's like, I still feel like I'm part of it. And then I don't know. I still feel fresh. Like I can see all the practices from the last 2 years that I've been to, like in my mind. And so
Right.
it's like I'm like comparing that with like all the knowledge I've got stored up. It's going to be interesting to talk with you about what's been going on because I've been living vicariously through you.
I'm doing my best, brother. I'm learning on the job though, because like
I
one
mean,
of the
first of all, how are you feeling? Like how do you feel about it so far?
honestly, it's my dream job, if I'm being totally honest. So it's been pretty
Yeah.
fantastic. Like, I've been studying this stuff from afar from a long time. Like, people like you, everybody on the Pats beat have been phenomenal over the years. So it's made it a lot easier for me. I have some idea of like where to put my eyes during some sessions just
Yeah.
because the tutelage has been fantastic from abroad. Abroad, I've been in the States the entire time. From
Yeah. No,
away.
I hear you.
But it's a learning experience. That's one thing. Anybody who's, you know, following along at home to OTAs, like this stuff, it's definitely a learning experience for a first year guy. And I'm getting humbled every day, but I mean, it's an amazing gig, man. Just to be able to see this stuff and like make your own observations and come up with your own takes. It's wild that this is like, what it actually is after again being somebody who followed from afar from so long. But it's been very cool. One of my favorite parts though has been watching Marte Mapu coming in together as rookies side by side, and he has been very interesting. So I
Okay.
know he's somebody
Okay.
we're going
Look.
to talk about quite a bit.
So we talked about that before, and we wanted to have that be a topic. You know what? Why not just start there? Okay. Obviously again I'm following along with you and what people are saying, and I'm following along with all the updates about Christian Gonzalez. Basically, every time I hear about him, he's starting. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
And okay, you would expect that from a first round pick. For example, like last year, Cole Strange, there was no learning curve. There was no nothing. He was the starting left guard day one. The moment the media
Yeah.
got access to practice, that man was never not the starting left guard for
Yeah.
any segment, anything that ever mattered. Like it was from day one.
Right.
And Christian Gonzalez sounds like he's on that same track. That maybe it's John Jones opposite him, maybe it's Jack Jones, maybe it's Market. Insert Jones here, but Christian Gonzalez is over
It's
there on one of
hard.
them sides.
One thing I will say, man, I feel like they're bullying me my first year on the job. I got three Joneses to deal with in the secondary. Now, I mean, obviously it happened last year and you guys had to deal with that, but man, it is impossible to try to juggle all these guys when you're writing these stories. It's just Jones, Jones, Jones. It's the first time. It goes against all my rules. I'm just using people's first names, Like I
Well,
went
yeah,
to all these years of journalism school. I have no idea what I was supposed to do in these situations.
yeah. It's like you got to like use your shorthand or basically what I used to do is I would do numbers, right? So I wouldn't even
Okay.
like do the names. I just put the number down. And then it's like, well, I know what number that is. So then just like
I'm
fill
getting
in
my
the blank
notepad.
later. So it's like, I don't know if maybe that would help you later. But like that's the thing because again, it was the same thing for me, right? Or it's just like, oh,
Right.
that's short Jones. But wait, there are two short Joneses. Short Jones, baby Jones,
Right.
middle Jones, slightly
Literally.
taller Jones.
Short Jones, real short Jones, and like
Yeah,
fairly short Jones.
yeah,
But all right, so I'm looking at the prompter because I know I'm the king of rambling. So Marte Mapu. The most surprising thing I think in this camp has been one, not only the role, but also the amount of involvement that Marte Mapu's had. Now, he's someone that I personally projected as a linebacker because, the Patriots listed him as a linebacker and called him a linebacker when they drafted him. But he's someone they've actually been using at free safety a lot, which is not something that was expected. You typically expect free safeties to be around the like 6'1", 5'11". Oh, no. Okay. Usually expect them to be around like the 5'11", 6, like 1 range, not super tall just because they have to change direction a lot. Mapu's been a consistent presence at free
yes.
safety, which is a very big surprise. Now, It's interesting because this is a safety group that's moving around a lot. Depending on what team is in there, guys are lining up at different spots. But again, Mapu's been a fixture at that free safety position. So it's going to be interesting to see how they use him once pads come on. And we know the Patriots are infamous for using guys in roles that you don't think make a lot of sense. Patrick Chung started his career largely playing free safety, and that wasn't something that worked out particularly well. And then he moved to the box and became the outstanding player that we know and love today. So it's going to be very fascinating to see if Mapu sticks in that role, just because at his size, you don't usually see guys playing center field. You see them covering tight ends, maybe buzzing down into the box, his zone coverage. So it's going to be fascinating to see where he lines up as the season progresses, but exciting to see someone that I personally fell in love with as soon as he was drafted be someone who's really involved early in making an impact.
Definitely. And by the way, anybody who may not see the stream but heard Taylor be like, "Oh no," that's because I dropped off the screen momentarily.
I dropped out, and then I panicked.
I dropped off the screen momentarily because my computer decided now would be a perfect time to switch Wi-Fi. But we're back, but we're good. But
it do be happening.
The thing that really intrigues me about Mapu, and just watching his film, watching him at the Senior Bowl, that dude has straight up TNT, like nitroglycerin in his freaking shoulders. I mean, look, I've seen Kyle Duggar just straight neutralize people, and Duggar's bigger than Mapu is, but Mapu's a gangster. Like, I mean, so it doesn't surprise me necessarily to see him kind of moving around. And I feel like if you had to create like an ideal role for Mapu, it would be like just a box safety, like just move him all over the place. Like, yeah, maybe he's covering, tight ends or, like a, kind of big power slot type of dudes. But
that's what he did in college.
In an ideal situation, you want that guy coming downhill and blowing people up because he's got the explosiveness, the short area quickness to shoot gaps. He's got the speed and raw athleticism to chase you sideline to sideline. He is a modern day linebacker, which means in a lot of ways, like it, when and I guess that's one thing to talk about. When you talk about modern linebackers, I think sometimes about like a guy like Roquan Smith, who's like 6 foot, 6'1", whatever, but he's still like 240, 250. He can run around, he can cover. But he's different. We're talking about a guy who's more like 220, 230 or something like that is going to be his optimal playing weight. He's basically a safety with the aggressiveness, tackling skill, and just explosiveness of a linebacker. And I feel like when you look at the way that Bill Belichick has kind of crafted this defense, only really like guys like Devin McCourty have been straight up, at least in the secondary, have been guys that are just like, okay, Devin McCourty is just going to be back there. He's going to be doing his thing in the deep part of the field. Everybody else is all over the place, right? Duggar, Adrian Phillips, John Jones, when you have the depth to do it, he could play outside, inside, whatever. So I love this for the Patriots defense. And honestly, I love to hear the fact that he is making this kind of impact early, or at least like he's catching the eye of the coaches, getting this much trust, because you need an infusion of young talent and athleticism on this defense. Because look, man, guys are getting older, and you hear all those blank check comments about Kyle Duggar. Like, I mean, we'll see if they go ahead and do that. I would do it.
That check's going up. Check could certainly be going up pretty soon.
Yeah, but it's like Adrian Phillips. You're going to keep him. So I think this only is good for them in the long term.
Absolutely. And then you talk about like young guys making an impact. It's hard to ignore Christian Gonzalez. He is even more so than Mapu. He's been a fixture in the secondary. He's been across from Jonathan Jones on a regular basis. And one thing that I thought was actually surprising today in minicamp was John Jones in more of their base packages. You see him outside. When they use this team uses a lot of big nickel, 3 safeties, 5 defensive backs. So you got your 2 quarterbacks outside. But when they actually go against 3 receiver sets and put that slot in, it's John Jones. And in OTAs, it was mostly Jack Jones opposite Gonzalez. But today, we also saw Marcus Jones getting involved outside, which was surprising for me because I thought the secondary was going to look Gonzalez, John Jones outside, Marcus Jones in the slot. because Marcus Jones, I just think, is a more consistent player. And John Jones was good outside, just not when he was facing guys that were 6 feet tall, because that's a clear size mismatch. So that was one of the bigger observations I had was that Gonzalez, he looks good. He actually had a pass breakup today on a downfield attempt that Mac Jones had to Devontae Parker. So I
That's
cannot
what he's
stress
there
enough.
for.
That's what he's there for. And I cannot stress enough, and I know this may not be good for, the headlines and everything, but like this is still minicamp. There are no pads on.
Yes.
Everything needs to be taken with a grain of salt.
Yes.
But at the same time, receivers are supposed to look great in these parts of the year. And the fact that Gonzalez was at least able to get a hand on a pass, and it did look like a good diagnosis, good break, all the things you expect from him, it's at least good to see that in these opportunities he's making an impact. But yeah, Gonzalez a fixture, and also very interesting to see that Marcus Jones is more in a competition outside than he is in the slot. So, just pure speculation, but maybe John Jones is the kind of guy that we see where he's outside in more of their base packages, only 2 cornerbacks. But when you see them use those 3 corner sets, Marcus Jones is going to be in the slot consistently, where obviously that's where he made his bones and that's where he's thrived for most of his career. So it'll be interesting to see how that plays out once there's contact and once coverage gets more competitive.
That's where Jones made his bones, M. Jones.
Jones made his bones. I didn't even realize.
Yeah, no,
I can make
seriously.
a rhyme at any time.
Elliot J. But look, I think one thing that I found interesting, I remember this shocked me at the time when I think it was the Buffalo game. Actually, there was an injury in the secondary. I can't remember if it was Jack Jones was unavailable. Marcus Jones was the first guy that they put outside, as a sub. And I just remember thinking, like, wait, what? Like this guy is he's 5'8", right? And it's like that's a slot corner type of thing. But I think they value his versatility and just ability to potentially play everywhere, even though I think the slot is the best use of him. But clearly they're not afraid to put him out there if they feel like that's the best place to be. I'm curious if it's more of a reps thing, like this early in camp, because you mentioned it, right? This is not real football. Okay. This is pretend. This is no pads. This is teaching time. As Bill Belichick will like to tell you, it's teaching time. And so they're going to try guys sometimes in roles that they're not used to playing in, or perhaps roles that they just want to see how they do in. But I do think that is intriguing because I remember seeing Marcus Jones get that action outside last year and thinking that is not what I expected. So I do think that they want to potentially try to mix and match with guys, because I feel like that's what this defense is going to be a lot of. Matchups, mixing and matching and being like, you know what? Okay, if this guy, like some straight basketball stuff, if this guy's in the game, I want Jack Jones singled up on that dude, or I want Marcus Jones singled up on him, or John Jones, on this guy. And I love the idea of John Jones being a movable piece, because I feel like that was not something that they had the depth to do last year. I always felt personally that if the opportunity was there, that having John Jones be able to start off outside and then kick back in on, in nickel and kind of dime sets, that would be awesome. I thought that would be great, but you just couldn't do it because he was just by far your best corner. But if you've got Christian Gonzalez, another just useful, even for a rookie, if we're talking about an average rookie corner out there, and the fact that, like, okay, that's not going to mess up our entire corner rotation if we move John Jones inside for a couple of plays a game. I just feel like that's huge. And again, think about the way that this team is really built. It's built to be versatile, particularly on defense, and it's meant to be high floor, right? You got a lot of good players who can do a lot of different things. I feel like that's when the Belichick defense, maybe not at its most dangerous. I would say when it's at its most dangerous when you have like Steph Gilmore, right? Who's just like, that side of the field is out of the picture. You ain't got to worry about that. They're not throwing over there unless they want to get it picked or knocked down or something bad to happen. And then you get to rotate everything else. But the next best thing is having a lot of good players who can hold their own. And I feel like they've got that on paper so far.
Absolutely. And one thing that I kind of took away was you mentioned opportunities. Like, one of the biggest reasons that we're not really sure what the rotation is going to look like when it comes to 3 cornerbacks specifically is because there hasn't been a lot of 3 cornerback sets. It's been a lot of 3 safeties. And the reason for that is because the Patriots aren't really using a lot of 3 receiver sets, which brings us into our next point. There were a lot of shades of the 2011 Bill O'Brien offense, also known as the Boston TE Party. present, not only in OTAs, but also now that we've gotten into mini camps. And part of it's to be expected. And it's going to be really interesting to see whenever Tyquan Thornton and Juju Smith-Schuster, who are both managing injuries, as Mike Reese reported, I believe, yesterday. Now that we understand more of the situations with them, it brings some clarity of why they're using a lot more two tight end sets than we're used to. But at the same time, Gesicki is looking really good out there. Like, he's very much your more slot-based tight end. He's
okay.
It's going to be interesting how much they've been using.
How have they been dealing with Henry? What's he been doing?
Henry is your Y. He is
he's
barely and distinctly your Y. He's been in line, but in the modern NFL, the Y position is less of just in line, like you're going to be attached to the formation every play. Sometimes you're the number 3 receiver split out. There's a lot of formations the Patriots use. Bill O'Brien loves his mismatches. So there's also formations where sometimes you'll see Hunter Henry, as we've seen in the past. This really isn't anything new. But we see him as the isolated receiver to the backside and get 3 receivers to another side. But it's interesting to see that Gesicki is really more like a slot receiver for them.
Oh, yeah.
He's not so much that inline guy that you would expect. So the amount of flexibility that gives them, because he can line up out wide for certain matchups in the slot as a number 2 or as a true number 3. Bill O'Brien is – I've just been watching way too many of his clinics, and I'm starting to talk like him. And I sound obnoxious. I mean, the number 3, the number 2, I sound like a jerk. I'm sorry. But basically the idea is you put these – O'Brien likes to put his best receivers inside because your best corners are usually outside. If it's zone coverage, that's where you put your Stephon Gilmore's, your J.C. Jacksons, your Christian Gonzalez. Those guys are usually on the perimeter.
Yep. And
so
DeAndre Hopkins in the old Texans offense, you line him up in the slot, and he would just be in there eating. I know. I'm on it. I'm on it, Taylor. I've been watching it. But I mean,
that's why we're here, baby. I'm excited. Keep going.
Yes. Keep going. Well, because that's the thing too. When you think about corners, right? There are some corners, like the best ones that can travel with a guy outside, not just across the field, like left versus right, but travel into the slot. It's different in there. It's just straight up different because you have to think about, okay, now this guy's got a 2-way go. I don't have the sideline as my help defender here. So you've got to be able to mirror. You've got to be able to move quickly. Not every outside corner can do that. And that's actually something that I remember because I watch a lot of Chicago Bears because I'm from there. And a couple of years ago, Devontae Adams gave Jalen Johnson the absolute business in the slot. And Jalen Johnson admitted, like, hey, man, like, I'm used to being on the outside. Like, playing inside is something I got to learn how to do better. And again, first of all, Devontae Adams is giving just about everybody the business, but that's still something that you got to think about. And so whenever you can get that mismatch, like, hey, look, this guy, he could play outside, but he's not really like that inside. Take advantage of that. Kill them. Kill that stuff.
I mean, you mentioned DeAndre Hopkins, so now I got to talk about it because you mentioned DeAndre Hopkins. Now I got to talk about DeAndre Hopkins. So it was actually addressed today. It's actually been addressed the past 2 times the media have had availability to DeAndre Hopkins. Kendrick Bourne said that Hopkins was someone that he watched as he was coming up, someone that he thinks is a great leader, and obviously has a storied career. Mac Jones said that, it wouldn't be the worst thing in the world having a guy like DeAndre Hopkins. And it's an interesting conversation because Hopkins isn't the same player that he was, and then I think what a lot of Patriots fans are expecting. Because a lot of fans expect, this is our guy where, defenses focus on him, and he's the priority, and then it opens things up for other people. Watching Hopkins film last season, to be very honest, the Patriots actually, ironically, were the only team that really showed him extra attention, and that was only in the red zone. So you have to say, okay, if Hopkins isn't this true number 1 that defenses are fixated on, because he's never been a fast guy, but in his prime, he had explosiveness. And it was enough that with his route running ability and with his physicality, he could still get open and threaten defenses vertically, so he was a 3-level threat. Now he's more of a short threat who can threaten you intermediate on back shoulder throws because he doesn't have that same juice. The guy's 31 years old. Not a lot of 31-year-olds can beat, 20-somethings in a foot race. So then it becomes like you were talking about. Like O'Brien was fantastic at using him, getting him mismatches, scheming him easier opportunities because a good offensive coordinator isn't going to have their best player go up against the best corner every play. Fans love to see it. Media love to see it, write stories about it, but a good coach is not going to put their top receiver in hard positions all the time. So while I do think that Hopkins isn't that guy that I think fans expect as the true difference maker, he's still the most consistent guy that I think the Patriots should have on the roster. Juju Smith-Schuster is managing an injury that he suffered in the AFC title game, and he's the only wide receiver on the roster who really gives you someone who's consistent, who defenses can look at and say, okay, this is a guy with an NFL resume who's given defense trouble in the past. We have to show him some level of respect, and he's been consistent. Outside of that, you have Devontae Parker. He's a great talent when he's healthy, but he gets hurt more often than not. Then you got Tyquan Thornton. All the talent in the world, we haven't seen it yet. Kendrick Bourne, kind of a similar situation. Very talented, but he hasn't been able to show that he can be that guy for an offense consistently. So you hope that if you bring in a guy like Hopkins, he gives that credibility and that consistency, and then other guys can thrive around him. But at the same time, I'm not totally sold on him being that number one and that difference maker that people want him to be. But I do think, again, that he could bring consistency and dependency that the Patriots currently lack.
I would put it this way. If DeAndre Hopkins signs with the Patriots, he immediately becomes the best receiver on the team.
Yes.
The question is, how high a bar is that? Because I don't think it's that high. And I'm not even saying that, like, the Patriots receivers are like utter and complete trash. I think they're average, right? And you could say that, DeAndre Hopkins, even at 31 years old, is an above average receiver in the league. But again, just like you said, is he DeAndre Hopkins from 4 years ago or something like that? No, he's really not. And I think that essentially, like when you're talking about the skill set part, right? When you're talking about short routes and you can threaten you intermediately and maybe deep, just like because maybe he's open when he's not open. He can get a back shoulder throw, or maybe he can go up over you or whatever. Basically, that's like better Devontae Parker, And
the thing is, Devontae is more explosive. It's hard. I honestly don't even, and that's the part that really, when I'm sorry to cut you off, but like the part that really racks my brain.
Yeah.
Hopkins isn't an X. So everyone says, I said you cut Devontae Parker because, that's the most logical train of thought. But I don't think that's where Hopkins thrives. So then who's your X?
I've got to be honest. I feel like, and I've said this for a while, that Kendrick Bourne would be the guy that I think goes in that situation. And I've been saying this going back several months. I've got to be completely honest. If you're talking about receivers that are the most expendable, you could definitely say Parker, right? In terms of the money, because there's no guaranteed money there. You like save like $6 million, poof, that's gone. But if you're talking about, again, what's on the roster that you don't have, like you don't have an X receiver if you don't have Devontae Parker. You've got several other dudes that can do what Kendrick Bourne does.
And here's the thing. And this is why I don't like the idea of getting rid of Parker, because then you have to scheme around not having an X. But to be fair, Juju Smith-Schuster, who obviously all of us kind of predicted to be a Jacoby Myers replacement, more of like a slot.
You lose something?
Quickly, am I here? Am I still here?
Yeah, you're still here.
It's a new setup. I'm sorry, everyone. We're figuring it out.
But I was like, did we get some breaking news?
No, nothing like that, unfortunately. Help me out. I got ADHD. Where was I going with that?
So we're talking about scheming around not having an X receiver if you get rid of Parker.
I got it. So if you get rid of Parker, yes, you have to scheme around it because it's okay. Are we going to have our X receiver, in a 3-by-1 formation, a backside guy who gets man coverage? Do we put him inside the numbers like Jacoby Myers, where sometimes you give him a two-way go, like you said, and it makes his life a little bit easier? But you still want that guy who he's outside the numbers, he can win, and we don't have to necessarily bend around perceived maybe lack of what we have that position. And Juju, I think, for the Chiefs last year, the Chiefs didn't have a true X either. They had Marquez Valdez-Scantling, and they had Juju as their main outside guys.
And then they had Travis Kelce, right?
But he was inside. Travis Kelce's not an X receiver.
Yeah, but I know what I'm saying with Travis Kelce allows you to not have that because he's a cheat code. Because he's he's better than anybody you're putting up across from him. So you can put other guys elsewhere, but in the end, the defense revolves around 87.
And this is why, I see Gesicki as someone who really is. He's not Travis Kelce. Like, no one think that's what I'm saying. That's not what I'm saying. But you have that tight end who a defense says this is really a receiver. But it's easy to say, oh, Mike Gesicki's just a receiver or a slot receiver. But he's also a 6'5", 6'6" slot receiver. How many slot receivers do you know who are 6 feet, much less 6'6"? So I think Gesicki is at least someone who presents enough of a threat inside where you don't necessarily, you can have more flexibility. You can have more tight bunch formations, the bunches, stacks,
Yeah.
some of the more compressed sets where you give your guys more two-way
guys
goes.
behind him. Yeah.
Exactly. And I'm not saying it's going to be easy. I do think Juju could be an occasional guy who can win outside for you just because he did do it for Kansas City. He was winning on slants. He was winning on back shoulder throws. Frankly, he was a better X receiver in the way he was used with Kansas City. And I'm saying outside the numbers, not just with the – oh, my God, I just knocked something over. Oh, no, I knocked over spot. Yeah. I knew that was going to happen at some point. But he's not the kind of guy who's necessarily going to, burn you outside. But he can catch those back shoulder fades. He can win on slants. He can do the things you need from an X receiver without necessarily taking the top off, which, again, you have to scheme around. But you have that presence where Hopkins could theoretically move around and be more of a Z or a slot. So
yeah,
it's an interesting fit. It's an interesting fit is all.
It is. I feel like, and kind of like to wrap this up, and this is something in regards to Kendrick Bourne. So obviously everybody loved what Kendrick Bourne did 2 years ago. He comes out and he has a career high, 800 yards, the most explosive receiver on the team. And he was explosive in the limited opportunities that he got last year. And I can't figure out why. I can't figure out why he didn't get more opportunities. I mean, or I think I can, but I'm not in the know, but who I blame.
Well, to be fair, no, Bourne did say that he didn't think his effort was great last season.
Yeah.
So that could definitely be part of the equation. But to be fair, he and Devontae Parker have been fixtures at wide receiver. And interestingly, this is one thing I'd also like to say. I think this is something that's kind of going under the radar right now.
Yeah.
Like I said, the Patriots aren't using a lot of 3 receiver sets, but when they do, Ty Montgomery is the slot receiver. And he's someone that's slated on a lot of rosters. I've got my depth chart that I make personally. I have moved Ty Montgomery from running back to receiver because it's where he's been. He has not been in the backfield. He's been practicing with wide receivers. He's been lining up as the main slot when they go through receivers. There's no way I could, with the access that we now have, I could not call him a running back because he hasn't been used that way. So I think that's another pretty interesting part of what's going on right now, not only in minicamp, but also this is a pattern that I noticed in OTAs.
And this is an interesting fact that I think, might lead us into one of the other topics we want to talk about here, because last year he bounced around a little bit. I would say he was mostly a running back, but there were practices where he was just solely working with the wide receivers. And again, I wonder if this is more of a reps thing, and also because you're missing some receivers, because when I think about it, Ty Montgomery is exactly what this team I thought this last year. He's exactly what this team wanted in the post James White world. I mean, he looked really good in the backfield last summer. And I remember thinking of him as, when he was signed, okay, it's a little bit of depth, we'll see how this goes. And then swiftly watching him play and being like, oh no, this guy's got more juice than I remember him having when he was with Green Bay and bounced around with the Saints and all of that. I remember thinking this guy, I think they really like him and they want to use him.
Yeah.
So I'll be curious to keep following you, and people who are watching it and seeing what happens, because I think that his deal, he's going to be one of those fungible positions where he could be put anywhere, potentially, but especially given the news that we saw today, I think that it's probably more likely that Ty Montgomery ends up playing more in the backfield than he does at wide receiver, assuming health, because as you might have all seen, Patriots fans, the Patriots released James Robinson, the free agent running back that they just signed this offseason to a modest free agent deal. It was 2 years, $4 million. So not a whole lot. And I think it was only like a touch over $1 million in guaranteed money. I viewed it at the time as a flyer. Let's see what he's got kind of guy. And great. If he's like this year's Ty Montgomery, that's wonderful. But the move doesn't terribly surprise me because of what I saw from Ty Montgomery last year and what it sounds like we're seeing from him this year.
Yeah, I thought it was just watching, I thought it was a tough projection because Jets' line was really bad when James Robinson got there. And he had done so well coming off a significant injury with Jacksonville before he got traded that I thought, maybe this is somebody who could break out with the Patriots. They got a great offensive line. It could give him a lot of good opportunities. But I have a feeling that he really, like you said, injury wise, he just was not able to be a consistent part of the team. And this was the first mandatory minicamp I believe they do. I actually found this out. I believe this is when they do a lot of their physicals to find out whether guys are even in shape to really
that's what
be
Mike
out
Reed
there.
reported.
Yeah, and I'm a rookie out there. I don't know these things. I learn as I go. But that was a pretty big part of the puzzle where it's more likely than not that he just wasn't physically able to be out at practices. Wasn't a guy that you saw really getting a ton of reps anyway. He didn't stand out necessarily in camp. Yeah. It's hard for running backs to stand out at this point in the offseason, but if he's getting cut this early, it's more likely than not health-wise or health-related.
Yeah.
So it's a good opportunity for Kevin Harris, who I think is, when you look at the depth chart now, he's the only real workhorse running back kind of backup they have. Like, God forbid, Ramondre Stevenson goes down. It's probably Kevin Harris getting most of the touches.
We're not going to talk about that.
We're not going to talk about that. I'm sorry.
No, I'm sorry. That's again,
never again.
And again, we don't necessarily want to talk about it in terms of quarterbacks, but that reminds me of like back in the day where they're just like, why at a Indianapolis Colts practice, why don't we give the backup some snaps like behind Peyton Manning? It's like, because that means we're effed and we don't practice effed.
Yes. That's the smart way to do it. So you're hoping that doesn't happen, but at the same time, Kevin Harris, he slimmed down a little bit. He does look good. And again, it's running backs can only do so much in these drills. So again, it just kind of emphasizes why Robinson kind of getting cut at this point in the year. It's, it's pretty significant and probably, again, health related, but good opportunity for Pierre Strong, who I thought was getting a lot of reps with Mac Jones, which is pretty significant, especially in hurry up kind of tempo drills. Yeah. One thing I'll also note in training camp, watch out for Mac Jones's snap count. If you remember when Cam Newton was on the team, one of his signatures was being able to have a cadence that would get guys off sides because they couldn't really get a beat on it. Mac's gotten at least one defender offside in every single practice I've watched. It's really, especially with O'Brien, you think of tempo, you think, you're more moving at a faster pace, trying to get the defense in disadvantageous situations. Like, the best quarterbacks do it. Brady does it. Aaron Rodgers does it, where they get to the line fast. They catch you trying to substitute. They get a free play. Mac Jones is doing a really good job getting the offense free plays. There's a lot of defenders running laps when they're doing team drills. So that's one other thing. That's completely off the tangent of running backs. But that's one other big thing that I noticed for sure was that he's really using that to his advantage. And in an offense where it seems like it's going to be more dink and dunk, like we saw with, again, O'Brien's last tenure in New England, it's more matchup based where you just give guys a chance in space. Getting those little wins and a chance to go downfield and just give guys an opportunity is going to be pretty big.
And, I think that we'll use that to kind of segue into the quarterback performance in minicamp. And I'll put it this way, right? Last year at this time, the flaws in the offense hadn't really shown themselves that much. I mean, sure, like there were parts where it's like, okay, they're not running the ball particularly well, but you're like, whatever, it's no pads. They're not really trying. They're just repping some different things. And I thought that the passing offense looked fine. And in particular, I thought Mac Jones looked sharp, like he was reading things really quickly, really well. And then obviously we get into training camp and the wheels just absolutely fall off the offense and they look completely and utterly pitiful. I'm curious when you're watching Mac Jones and Bailey Zappi, quarterback, whatever, but particularly Mac Jones, how is he operating this offense and what kind of stuff are they doing? Are they doing a lot of empty sets where he's just like 3 steps and it's out? How are you feeling about that?
one thing that I learned from being on this beat is that there's a lot I can't say.
Yeah,
There's
I
like,
got you. Yeah,
you see,
yeah,
the rule of thumb is you're not supposed to talk about scheme, and I'm just gonna. I don't know.
it's
So
funny
I'm
because
very nervous. This is
I
a new
feel
guy
like
to talk about
people.
that.
The funny thing is that like people will say that and then turn around and do it on the podcast anyway. But at the same time, I got you. But let's keep it more
I'm
general.
just so I'm green
Yeah,
out there.
keep
I
it
just don't want
keep
to
it.
ego.
Let's keep it more general then. Let me
Yeah,
rephrase this question
yeah.
journalistically. What have you thought about the way Mac Jones is operating in the offense? Then let me cut the last part of that question off.
Right. Okay. I'm sorry. Yeah, I panicked, but it's been a lot of short to intermediate throws. Not a ton of intermediate, but really, it's more of an underneath quick passing game. And I also want to dissuade uh, any possible misconceptions. It's not Matt Patricia's offense. Like, it's not just desperate RPO bubble screens on like 2nd and 10. It's not that. It's not anything like that. Bill O'Brien clearly knows what he's doing out there, and he's scheming this offense towards success, in my opinion. So I would give that to fans as something to make you a little more optimistic. But it has been a lot of underneath throws. The tight ends and the running backs have been pretty heavily involved in what they're doing, which obviously you're not super excited to hear about. But at the same time, Tyquan Thornton's not out there, and he's your speed guy. And your other speed guy is Mario Douglas. He's a rookie. Ed Lee seems to be kind of more of an, I don't want to say more of an impact player, because honestly, those depth guys aren't doing a ton either. It's
Yeah,
not really like one guy's outshining somebody else. They're kind of just, they're depth guys. But Douglas, one I got to speak with him today. He fantastic human being. And his whole thing is people love his work ethic, and he's, the pop, he's explosive. So I feel like he's somebody who may have to come along more as he's a younger player who's, as an undersized guy, kind of starting at a disadvantage. Um, but plain and simple, I'm sorry, Mac Jones again. It's more the underneath passing game. I think someone mentioned in the comments, it's the death by 1,000 cuts type of offense that I
yeah,
mentioned when I wrote about OTAs, where ball's coming out relatively quick when they can. When it's not coming out quick, it's usually going underneath. There were a couple downfield throws to Devontae Parker today in practice. Both were broken up. One was Gonzalez, one was Jack Jones. There were some good completions to Gesicki and Hunter Henry downfield. Again, with all this 12 personnel they're using, you're hoping those are really your workhorses and the receivers are more complementary. The way that they kind of had it back in 2011, although obviously Wes Welker was Wes Welker. Helps you a lot. But you're hoping those tight ends are more of a fixture, and they definitely were. They're getting a lot of the targets. And I think once pads come on, you're really going to see what this offense can become, because
yeah.
they're not an offense full of speed and finesse guys. They're an offense. It's a lot of guys who are going to make tough catches at the catch point, and some of them are going to be able to do something after the catch, which, again, without pads, you're not really seeing what these guys are doing
Right,
in
of
that
course.
aspect. So it's measured takeaways, because you don't want to hype anything up too much or too little with shorts and t-shirts and whatnot. But
Yeah,
it's more that quick strike passing attack that you saw when O'Brien was here last.
yeah. And I think I hesitate to even talk about this because I just never believed anything that was being reported about it. I've just not put any stock into the idea. But from what you've seen, is there anything to suggest that Mac Jones is being pushed for the starting job?
No, nah, man. Like, nah. So
I
the
just
reps that
again,
I've seen,
I just had I feel like I just had to ask and put
you
it
know,
out there
but you know where I am here, though.
yeah, but it's like,
I,
I have to put it out there for the listeners, right? Because you're
of
there,
course,
you
of
see
course,
it.
of course,
I mean, I was
of
there
course.
last year, and I mean, here's the thing, man. I had people telling me before the season even started. I'm talking about like before week 1, where I had people talking to me about, I think Zappy's already better than Mac, and I'm just like, you just no, I can't. Like
So you know what I'm living through.
you haven't seen the practices where Zappy like is just one speeding, throwing it completely off the field and just like throwing it right to Jack Jones. Like he threw Jack Jones a pick like every practice, like just right to him. And I'm just
And
like,
in Zappy's defense, it hasn't been that bad. Honestly, actually, he had I think it was really 2 touchdowns in the sessions, but there was one notable one where he threw to Trey Nixon. I believe it was on a post route. where there was a receiver right on his tail. It was I think one of the best throws of the day, to be totally
Good.
honest.
Yeah.
Again, it's against guys you don't
Oh,
expect to
yeah,
see on the field a lot, but
but you
still,
want to
like the
see it.
guys making plays.
Yeah.
Exactly. So Zappy does not look necessarily like a backup when he's playing against guys who you're probably going to expect to be backups. You know what I'm
Or
saying? Like
guys who
he
like
looks
might,
fine. He
or
looks
is like
fine.
he's like playing against and throwing to guys who aren't going to be on the roster.
Right. Like he looks as good as you would hope your backup quarterbacks look. But yeah, it's Mac Jones. It's Mac Jones, and you know that if you have seen Mac Jones, not only in person, I think if you also just watch their NFL reps, they're not comparable players.
No, they're
But
just
storylines are storylines. So if we have to feed in the narrative, CLNS's position on this particular show is that it's not a conversation. It's Mac Jones.
No, and I mean, again, it just slayed me all last year, where I had to constantly. And again, I'm not even going to sit up here and say that I was Mac Jones's biggest fan coming out of college, or even that I was Mac Jones' biggest champion after his first year. I was like, oh, he's good. He's good for a rookie, right? Because that's the thing that people got to understand when it comes to watching football players. There's good, and there's good for a rookie, right? Particularly when you're talking about first-year players. Mac Jones was really good for a rookie. Was he a top 10 quarterback in the NFL? No, and that's okay. That's all right. Bailey Zappi was good for a rookie for a couple of games, and then he came in and they hit him with the element of surprise against the Chicago Bears, and they get 2 touchdown drives, and you're just like, oh my God, this is it. And then you know what happened? He started looking like Bailey Zappi again after that. And
he looked like a first-year guy being forced to start.
People don't want to talk about that because it kind of ruins the image. But again, that's to be expected. Bailey Zappi is supposed to look more like that in his first year of NFL action. The brother just hasn't played a lot of professional football. So I feel like people needed to come back to earth a little bit and also understand the context of what this offense was and just the challenges that were facing the overall unit. And again, the fact that they were not running the same offense. I don't care what anybody says. I charted it. I did the numbers. I did visual breakdowns. I did it all to show that they were not running the same offense. I think that this year, when you have the two of them doing the same thing, and this in particular, I think fits Mac Jones' skill set pretty well, what Bill O'Brien is asking him to do. I would hope that, first of all, I would hope that you're going to see better play from both of them. But I think that you're going to see something from Mac Jones that shows you like, okay, there's a difference between what this guy does and what Bailey Zappi does.
And we'll see that when the Pavs come on. Like when this stuff is competitive and when we really he got receivers creating real separation, not creating real separation, and you see where the real talent divide is, that's where it's going to come out. But again, for now, there's not a lot to read into it. Honestly, even okay, so today in Mac Jones's practice, he had 2 pass breakups, which I mentioned. Devontae Parker targeted him down the sideline, was broken up by 2 outside cornerbacks. They weren't super competitive reps. It looked like more shot plays, seeing what he could do. And these are slow-paced drills, so it's not an accurate, as you know, it's not an accurate indicator of what these guys are actually capable of. And then, as you'll see written, I'm sure, he threw 2 interceptions. One was to Kyle Duggar when Duggar clearly knew what was coming. Mac was pissed afterwards because he was pointing like, can he do that? Like, clearly, these guys are practicing each other all the time. There's certain formations where we saw Duggar do it against the Raiders. Like, he's a smart guy.
Duggar just does that. I mean, there's nothing wrong with that. And I think I love that you're providing the context to that, though, because sometimes people will be seeing, Mac threw 2 interceptions, or like somebody threw interceptions. And it's like, first of all, as you mentioned, these are not wholly competitive reps. And I've seen camp interceptions where it's clearly just like, okay, well, Devontae Parker's down there somewhere. I'm just building chemistry right now. I'm just gonna throw it over there.
That was the second. I'm sorry, that was the second pick he threw. There was one where he got pressured. He rolled out and just literally. It was, you don't see Mac do this. Like, he literally just rolled out, saw a guy, and just popped it up. And then Adrian Phillips, the throw was behind because he really wasn't. It didn't look like he was really trying. It was behind the receiver, Adrian Phillips. Literally, that's all it was. And you look at it, you're like, I'm not gonna. you want to report on what's happening. Like, I'm, again, a new guy. I'm trying to walk that line, but I'm like, I need to make sure that people understand that, yes, he threw interceptions, but neither one was, oh no, Matt can't read a defense. It's no, like
Yeah.
they practice against each other all the time. Duggar knew what was coming, and Mac just kind of let one fly when he was trying to get a rep in. It's you can't take these things too seriously. Like, if there's an egregious error, and if basically the barometer is if Bill O'Brien is screaming at you, then somebody effed up. Like,
Yeah.
then it was a real error. And that's happened where you'll hear O'Brien and it's like, oh no, that guy is in trouble. He made a mistake. But I didn't hear a peep. Oh, like Mac didn't seem
Yeah.
terrible. And we know what Mac is like when he throws an
Oh,
interception.
yeah.
If he
Yeah.
makes a mistake,
He's
you
pissed.
know he made a mistake, and he seemed fine. So, which even if you want to take the interceptions into account, like Mac Jones did not seem rattled by mistakes, which is something you saw constantly last year. So, if you're looking for some shred of daylight in, the offense wasn't great, but it's a great defense, and it's not the same pace of practice. So, Mac Jones, he looks happy. He looks like he's actually enjoying playing, a sport for a living. Not to be condescending at all. That sounded kind of condescending, but he looks like he's having fun out there.
Let's keep it
And it
real
looked
here.
like it was rough for him last year. Like, he looked like he was not having a good time. So.
I mean, about game 13, I mean, I wouldn't have been having a good time either, because that was
very fair.
Like, no, and we weren't having.
I wasn't having a good time watching. I was having quite a terrible. I was having quite the awful time.
No one wanted to be a part of that, so don't blame that with Mac Jones. But hey, for now, good. For now, okay, good things to report. The world's not ending. I mean, it could be a whole lot worse. Again, last year minicamp was, about the same thing where it's like, oh yeah, the guy looks great in shorts and all that. But as long as we don't hear that the offense, like, it'd be one thing if, like, oh yeah, the defense had the advantage of the offense today, or the offense was completely and utterly incompetent and just couldn't run a single play, and the receivers running into each other, and the offensive line couldn't block a running play. As long as we don't hear that, I'll take that as an improvement.
I think we should. These are non-padded practices that they run at a significantly slower pace than they would ever run in a live reps. So, really the takeaway from these practices, where are guys on the depth chart? How involved are certain people? Is there good communication? As much as I hate to buy into body language, like, really, it's like those kinds of things are what you have to go on. And I would say it's all positive. The defense looks good, as you would expect it to, because this should be a top 3 unit in the NFL, very honestly. And then Mac Jones looks like he doesn't look like he's being hard on himself. He looks like he's in command. As I said, it's his job to lose. So I would say, as far as a mini camp observation could possibly go, if I'm a Patriots fan, I'm feeling pretty good.
All right. It's going to be interesting to see once this thing kicks off for real about a month from now. But as you know, we got a couple more mini camp practices that Taylor is going to be checking out. So keep on following him, and I'll be back. That's all I'm gonna say about it. I will be back on here.
We might even have a name next time. Who knows? We might have our own little thing going on.
I don't know. Maybe, possibly. We'll see. We'll see. Also,
Jeff Williams, please, Jeff Williams. It's okay. It'll be okay.
It's going to be all right.
My guy is not having a good time in the comment section.
I understand. We're here for you. We're here for you.
It was a game, bud. He's looking good. He's looking good. Friendly final reminder: Mac Jones.
Mac Jones is going to be their starting quarterback for the New England Patriots Week 1. I mean, I don't know. I'm sorry if that hurts you, bro, but it is what it is. Also,
okay, I'm sorry.
Keep the fact that I did not put the lights on in the background, because it was like nice and bright when this started out, and now like I look like I'm in the twilight zone. So like I've got my like phone light as a backlight. I'll think that through better next time.
The daylight savings is honestly wild. I went grocery shopping yesterday, left at 8:00, and the sun was still out. I was pleasantly surprised, but yeah, man, it's been sneaky. So no one's faulting you there, brother.
All right, man. But it was great. It was great jumping on with you, man. And I'm looking forward to being back on with you and following your work, my friend.
Thank you, brother. I'm gonna keep doing the absolute best I can, giving you guys
You're killing
All
it.
the good news, and obviously it's also always awesome to talk to you, my man.
You
Thank
are
you.
dominating. Keep on doing your thing, man. We shall be back. Peace out. And thank all of you for tuning into this episode. Can't wait to do it again with all of you.